Hello world, UB here, and today we're going to be writing a character for the Spiral game system tabletop RPG. Now that's a lot of words, but basically my friend Arcandio put together a tabletop RPG system. And a system is basically like a set of rules that you can write different games into. It's kind of like Dungeons & Dragons, but Dungeons & Dragons is both a system and a game. He only wrote the system part of it, and now I am in the process of writing the game part of it. Basically, you can write any kind of game into the Spiral game system, but the game I'm specifically putting together today is a ghost hunting game, and I'm so excited about it. For returning viewers of the channel, you guys know that I am obsessed with the game Phasmophobia for PC and VR systems. Basically, today I'm going to show you how to put together a character in the Spiral game system, at least in the version that I am working on right now, because it's still in testing, and so putting together this game is part of that testing to see exactly what different experience levels will be like with this system, so that everybody has access to it and we can kind of tweak it and refine it so that more people are able to use it. With that being said, I wanted to kind of start this off by just showing you what I have done so far. I have so far put together some weapons for each of the ghosts because I'm statting out the ghosts as the antagonists of this game, and I wanted them to kind of be a little bit more in-depth than the Phasmophobia ghosts are, so I wanted to give each of them a trademark weapon, although you could swap these out if you're GMing and you want your specific ghost with a specific backstory to have a specific weapon. But as far as that goes, I've also put together a few ways to put the ghost to rest, because something in Phasmophobia that could really be expanded upon is that it would be really nice to not only figure out what kind of ghost we're dealing with, but then to also put it to rest, help it move on from this world, do something extra to really beat the mission, more or less. And so I wanted to add that into the tabletop RPG game here, and I think I have 4-5 ways that a ghost can be dealt with after you figure out what kind of ghost you're dealing with. This is the section that I really need to be working on. I haven't statted out any of the ghost hunting equipment, and all of that's going to be very unique to the Spiral game system, and this is what we're actually going to be working on today, is putting together basically the Joe Schmo average ghosty. And so I'm going to walk you through this as concisely as I can, and we're just going to kind of go for it. So the way that Arcandio kind of outlined this for us in our other test campaigns is we have the XP at the top. Your character basically has a bunch of stats and tactical pieces and equipment / powers that all have their own XP values, and that's what adds up to your character's XP value. So your experience points really describe how powerful you are as far as your stats and everything that your character has go. And then you can add their range up here, which I've just been kind of feeling out because there isn't really a formula for it. So I'm going to probably stat out the rest of my ghosts and take the average of that for this spirit, because as you can see in the aspects section, he is Casper, the average ghost. This is going to be a little bit confusing for Dungeons & Dragons players because you are not familiar with the Fate Core system. However, Arcandio wrote this book with his friend Richard Kelly, and it's called Oubliette, and it is based off of the Fate core system, and I played a game of Oubliette where Arcandio was the DM, and it was a hoot and a half. And if you have trouble understanding the Spiral game system, I would highly, highly suggest that you go over to TTRPG here and just get the watermarked PDF version. Don't get me wrong, the book is amazing, and Arcandio's art in here is also just stunning. You can see some of it on the TTRPG page, but really all you would need to get an understanding of how aspects and flaws work is the watermarked PDF. And Arcandio is not paying me to say this, by the way. I'm just saying, in my journey of figuring out Spiral game system and really getting a handle of it, Oubliette has helped me immensely, and it's worth the $15 if you're going to get into Spiral game system. However, you do not have to. That is not my point here. So aspects, they're really important parts of the character, and they'll also inform the powers that your character has going forward. So like for the spirit, they're kind of the average, like median ghost, you could say. They don't have any strengths in Phasmophobia, which makes them a little bit weird to make aspects for. Basically, I put in Casper the average ghost because they're not going to be doing anything that is extremely scary, is extremely powerful necessarily, but they are going to be a little bit of a nuisance. Not so much as a poltergeist, they're just going to be the average Joe Schmo that is stuck on the mortal plane. And for each of my ghosts, I've been making one of their aspects what equipment they are detectable by. So for a spirit in Phasmophobia, it's spirit box, fingerprints, ghost writing. And then another aspect is what kind of death they have, so how to put them to rest. In the spirit's instance, I decided to bind it to earth by an object. This is the point where I want to talk about the character creation page for Spiral Game System. If you're interested in Spiral Game System, I suggest going to voidspiral.gitlab.io/sgsapps. And that will actually take you to the home page here. And it's really cool. There's a night mode and a day mode for those of us who really like to have our screens dark. Here at the top, there's a read the docs button that you can press. The doc that I'm specifically using right now is the character creation doc, and you can navigate over here on the side, and it's really, really intuitive and great that way. Now, all of the docs aren't complete. That's partially why I'm helping test the system and figure out what needs further explanation. However, it's a really good place to start, and if you have questions about it, I'd suggest going to Arcandio's Discord, and you can ask as many questions as you would like. And Joe is a very responsive creator, developer. He would absolutely love to have people take a look at what he's working with here and really help test it. In the character creation portion of this, these docs, there's an example quick build, and that is what I'm using for all of my characters. And I'd suggest it's a really good place to start before you really get creative with your characters, because as long as all of your characters really follow these guidelines, they'll be pretty balanced, and that's really the goal here. So basically what you want in a character is you want to have 3 aspects. We just talked through the 3 aspects that I put together for our spirit, and then we want to have 1 flaw. And why do we have a flaw, you may ask? All of the ghosts in Phasmophobia have a weakness, and that's what I use as their flaw here. The spirit's flaw is that when you use a smudge stick on it, it can't attack for a while. And so that's what I put together here, is I can't attack when you smudge me. A character can enact their flaw in order to earn an advantage. And usually that advantage is a token. And you can use a token to activate one of your powers or do something out of the ordinary. And you get 2 at the beginning of every session. If you have extras at the end of a session, those will also carry over to your next session, but everyone starts out with at least 2. You can use a flaw if you've run out of tokens for whatever reason. And as long as you think you can get away with it, it can be useful to kind of take that disadvantage in order to gain an advantage elsewhere. We're gonna skip down to the skills section, and maybe I'll just move the skills section up here to make things easier later on, but for now we'll just leave it down here. So if we look at the example quick build, with the skills, you're going to be assigning 2 of them a +4, 3 of them a +3, 3 of them a +2, and 2 of them a +1. So that's what we're gonna do, but I want to duplicate this tab and show you the skills list. So you can make your own skills in SGS, and I have made 3 that are in the special category for the ghosts themselves. Those are mental influence, we've got teleportation, special. The last one is corporeality. I do have more thorough explanations at the bottom here in footnotes, and then they'll have other skills as well. Basically the ones listed here, and a lot of these do align pretty well with D&D skills, so you can kind of extrapolate what they mean off of there, and as long as you and your players have the same understanding of the skills, it'll be relatively balanced, and you just need to talk that out with your players, basically. Casper the average ghost. What skills should he have? I want him to have at least 1 in each area, and he's gonna have a little bit of each telepathy, mental influence, and corporeality. And then in total, we'll have 2, 8, 9, 10 skills, so we need 7 more. Now that we've picked all of our skills out of our handy dandy skill list here, we're going to assign specific numbers to them. So we want the skills that we want to be the most powerful, we want to give a +4. The second most powerful, we want to give a +3, and so on until there's just the +1s left. We talked about him being streetwise. I think that's very Casper-esque, and I want to just give that a +4. We need 1 more skill that has a +4. So I'm thinking none of the special characteristics are gonna be a +4, they're just gonna be average. But maybe he's really good at noticing. So we'll give that a +4. We want to give him a little beefiness in the combat arena, so we'll give him extra block and navigation. And I'm thinking empathy, just because we talked about that very specific instance where it might be good for him to be empathetic and be able to talk to the players in a way that other ghosts don't necessarily do because they're more aggressive. And then we just need to add in 2 1s, and that's basically what is left in the list. So we want to look over these skills and make sure we're comfortable with how that played out. As I'm reading through here, I don't have any qualms with it, so I'm gonna leave this way, and if through testing we need to adjust things, that is totally fine. So now that we know what our skills are, we're going to go up here, and that will kind of inform what stats we want to give what power, because one of these stats is going to have a 4, 2 of them are going to have a 3, 2 of them are going to have a 2, and 2 will have a 1. And this will inform what areas our character is actually powerful in. So the one that is the most powerful for your character, you want to give a 4. I didn't actually look at what each of these skills is based in, and I should have. Something that I'm trying to put together for Arcandio to add to the docs is a table where you just pick out each of your skills and then you write down what each of them is in. So let's see here. Navigation is creativity, block is fitness, hand-to-hand fitness. So that's 2 for fitness. Let's make him really creative. I'm okay with that. And then fitness would be a 3. Awesome. The base speed for your character is going to be 4. So basically I've just been making the speed for all of my ghosties 4, and then sometimes they'll have powers that make them go faster under certain circumstances. And then here in the example quick build, it says calculate all thresholds and pools. This takes a little bit more time and I'm not gonna make you watch me do it. I am using a example build that Arcandio used in a different test of the system that I was a part of. The thresholds are things that need to be surpassed before characters make any damage to a character's pools. And the pools are the things that basically determine how injured your character is. And so it's really important to have good thresholds, but not so good that they don't end up hitting the pools, if that makes sense. So it has to be balanced. And so I just used the formulas that Arcandio came up with that worked well in the last test. And I would suggest you do the same until you really get acquainted with the system. So for physical grays, you'll take your acrobatics, athletics, combat sense, and dodge modifiers, which are the things that we just put together, and you'll do the maximum of that. And that'll be your physical grays. And then the next step up is your physical wound, which is your physical grays plus your best armor. Now none of my ghosts have armor so far, so that would be a 0, so my physical grays and my physical wound are the same. And then the next step up is physical trauma. You would do your physical wound plus your fitness plus endurance over 2, so the average of your fitness and your endurance modifiers. And so this is where you do a bunch of math, basically, and after you get past the physical trauma is when it would start to take down your health pool. And it's the same kind of thing here. You just plug your modifiers that you just made into the formula and poof, you have a number of pools that you have for health. So we're gonna leave the pools and thresholds blank for the moment, just because I'm not gonna make you watch me do the math. And then we would go down here and do our equipment. Basically, I'm going to show you how to calculate the XP on a character, and you do the same thing on a smaller level for all of your equipment. So Casper, the average ghost. We have to think of a thing that he could do or a piece of equipment that he could have. Maybe Casper has ectoplasm. Limitations. Limitations are another set of rules that you deal with at the beginning of setting your stuff up. Basically, there are these lists of limitations that you can put onto each piece of equipment, right? So if something has no actions, it means it's something like a sword. That means that it can't take an action itself. It's an inanimate object, so it has no actions. If it's disarmable, it's something that can be like flung out of your character's hand. If there's a small cost to activate it, then you're basically like doing what you do with the tokens, where you're taking a small hit in order to do the thing that you want to do. Once per scene is something like your character can only activate this once per scene, and a scene will be something that your GM kind of sets up at the beginning of the game. In this game, I have put it together so that a scene is basically ended anytime that the players have to regroup and come up with a different game plan, because this game is set up to be played in 1, 2, 3 shots. So each mission will be 1, 2, 3 sessions. So they're going to be relatively short. So I got rid of the once per day limitation because it doesn't really apply to this game. If it has a rare trigger, so if you can only do this specific power with a very specific thing that may or may not happen, that's what that limitation is for. And a common trigger would be the same thing, but it's something that is more likely to happen. So you're probably thinking, what are these numbers for behind each of these? Because if you have a rare trigger for your power or equipment, then it's going to be less useful to you in effect than something that doesn't have a trigger or has a common trigger. In that specific example, a rare trigger limitation will actually make your XP value of your equipment half as much as it is in effect. A common trigger, on the other hand, because it isn't as impactful, will make sure that your XP value on that equipment is multiplied by 3/4. So you get 3/4 of the XP value instead of 1/2 of it. And that's what the advantage is to having a common trigger versus having a rare trigger. So it evens out how effective your equipment is in the field versus what its XP value ends up being. With that being said, let's take a look at our spirit guy here. So if he has ectoplasm goo, that's going to be a inanimate object. We're gonna give it the no actions. Let's see, I don't think it's disarmable. He can just kind of create more. So I'm gonna just give it the no actions. I think it's gonna be pretty bland, so it's not gonna have a lot of aspects or flaws. You want to come up with something that is specific to the ectoplasm goo, but it's the same kind of concept as what you did up higher in the document on the character itself. Basically, your equipment and powers down here are little versions of your character in how you put it together. Stick you in place. So it's possible that this could slow a player character or immobilize them. That would be cool. Ew, troll buggies, which is a Harry Potter reference for those of you out there who don't know. Basically, the idea being that it might weird a person out if they like step in it and they're like, ugh, what is this? Ew. As far as flaws go, maybe it doesn't need one. A lot of my equipment doesn't have flaws, although some of my weapons do. And then skills. So this is basically what powers could you enact in order to give yourself a bonus on specific types of rolls. So I actually want to scroll down here and look at my weapons real quick. So I think ectoplasm goo is something that will be thrown for the most part, so I want to give +3 ranged and tactical. Do I actually want it to do damage? But yeah, so when we do the math on the XP on here, basically each aspect is worth 10 XP points, so we have 30 here. So skills are squared, so that'll be 9, so that's 39. And then when I add this XP to my character, I will multiply it by 0.75, and that'll effectively make the character reflect how useful the piece of equipment actually is. Maybe hold a conversation could be a good one, because most of these ghosts are so aggressive that they won't. Limitations, it is an action more or less. It's not disarmable. We could do small cost. We could do once per scene, or maybe rare trigger. That could be good. I think rare trigger. I'm gonna say that like they can talk to him through the spirit box, which is pretty specific. I'd almost like to add once per scene on there too. So you might be thinking here, like, why would you have 2 limitations and how does that work? Basically, let's say ectoplasm goo had these 2 limitations. We would, when we add them to our character, take 39 XP times 0.5 times 0.33, and that would be the XP value that gets added onto the character for ectoplasm goo. So that's basically what we'll be doing with hold a conversation when we have our XP value. Empathy a little bit. We'll do +2. Maybe he's a little leader. Maybe that would be cute. Let's do +3 leadership. We'll do this math again. So we have 3 aspects, which is 30 XP, plus 16, plus 2 squared, which is 4, plus 3 squared, which is 9. So this will be 59 XP. All right. How much XP? 85 is supposed to go towards equipment, so I think we'll take out this blank piece of equipment and see what we're working with as far as XP goes on this guy. But yeah, so let's take out the calculator again. So just like in our equipment, our aspects, each one is worth 10. So we have 3 aspects here, which would be 30 total, and each flaw is worth -10. So we're gonna take 10 off because we have 1 flaw. And then the stats and skills are all squared, which means for each character in this campaign, they're going to be the same amount because we're assigning the same numbers. It's just in different orders, more or less. So let me take a look at my notes real quick. Skills will be 73. Oop, my bad. There we go. So the stats up top, Arcandio has been calling primaries. Those are 88 XP for each character. And then we'll be adding to that 181 all of our equipment with our limitations. So hunting mode is 55 times our limitations. So that's gonna be times 0.3 repeated times 0.5. And then ectoplasm is 39 times 0.75. And hold a conversation is 59 times 0.5 times 0.3 repeating. $231. That sounds about right. Which is a little squishier than I would want my ghost to be, but maybe I'll play with him off stream a little bit. I'm just glad to have a example of how to create a character here. So 231, and that is his total XP value, which basically lets you compare him to other characters. So all of my players are going to be putting together characters that are around 300 XP, but if I had a ghost, for instance, that was like 600 XP, he would be twice as powerful as my players, and that could be a problem. So I'm trying to make all of my ghosts around the same amount of XP, and then hopefully they won't be slaughtering my players, but that's what will need to be adjusted more or less. You can do the math and kind of list out what the ghost's top stats are in, or skills I should say, and that'll kind of tell you what their strengths are. And then the range is just how far they can throw things and see things and that sort of stuff. So I will likely just feel that out based off of my other ghosts, because it's kind of a stat that you have to have a little intuition for, but it's very similar to range in D&D and other systems like that. So I'm gonna look at what my other ghosts are like, and since this is the average ghost, I'll kind of take the average of that, and that'll be my spirit, which is really exciting. So I've been doing basically these little doodles that I'm going to put into a journal for my players, because I'm going to be GMing this face-to-face with my players, and I'm putting together these doodles to put into little journal entries that will tell them about the different types of ghosts. And I think it'll be a really fun prop that'll add a little something something to it, and I'm going to add that into the PDF of the game if I ever get to the point where it's publishable. So yeah, that is my ghost hunting game. And I think that's all I have to say about it at the moment. It's a lot of work, but I'm very excited, and I think that putting together this little tutorial about how to create a character is going to be really useful as well, because I was very confused when I first started putting my ghosts together, and thankfully Arcandio is a very responsive developer, and I'm on his Discord, so he's one of my better friends, and it was really great to have him get back to me and kind of walk me through it, and that way I was able to kind of put together how it works best for me, and hopefully that'll help other people put together characters and the like. So with all that being said, I'll let you guys get on with your day. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot. I just started streaming a month and a half ago, thereabout. So it's really cool to play around with the different things that I can do here. So thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to drink some water, and I will probably talk to you again soon. Peace.